Good morning Year 4 and welcome to Tuesday's maths lesson. Now this lesson is for the children with the Year 3 booklets. So if you've got this booklet here, then this video is for you. And today we're going to be working on page 21. So just page 21 for our learning, and it's the page that looks like this. Okay. Right, so before we begin, I've got a warm up on the board behind us, and it's a halving game. So what we've got is 30 seconds on the timer, and we're going to see how many of these numbers we can halve to get all the way around and see if we can get to the finish line. Okay, so let's have a look. So there's our halving race. We're going to start here at the number 20. So we need to find half of 20, and remember we have got a timer on here. Now you can have a go at this as well at home if you want to. So if you wanted to pause the video now and set yourself a timer, you can use the halving race that I've got on the board. Right, so for those of you that are playing with me, I'm going to press play and we're going to halve as many numbers as we can. So we've got 30 seconds. Okay, so we need half of 20. So half of 20, can you tell me half of 20 is 10? Half of 10 is 5. Half of 8, so 8 divided by 2 is 4. Half of 2, take off one of them down, is 1. Half of 16, so 16 divided by 2 is 8. Okay, nearly there. Half of 18 is 9. Half of 14 is 7. I'm going to stop there because we've just gone past the 30-second mark, so we stopped on 33 seconds. So actually I think we need a lot longer on this, so let's give ourselves another 30 seconds to see if we can get around the track. Okay, so I'll start it again. So we're starting with this number here, which is number 12, and we need half of 12, so we're dividing it by 2. So let's begin again. So half of 12 starts the clock. Half of 12, we should know, is 6. Okay, now we've got 6, half of 6. 6 divided by 2. Can you tell me 6 divided by 2 is 3? Half of 4, 4 divided by 2. Can you tell me quick? Half of 4 is 2. Half of 10, we've done that already, that's 5. Half of 16, we've done that already, which is 8. Half of 8 is 4. Half of 2 is 1. Half of 14 is 7. I'm going to stop us there because we have also just gone past the halfway, the 30-second mark. So we were just about getting through there, and it starts to get easier as you start to get some of the numbers that have been repeated previously in the sequence. So you can have a go at that at home if you want to. You can just pause the video and maybe set a timer yourselves on your phones or any other device for you. Okay then, so we're going to start off by looking at our learning question for today. Now you can see that the board is very similar to yesterday's learning, and that's because we are going to continue rounding and estimating. So we're continuing with our learning. Yesterday we were just introducing it, and today we are going to continue on the other page. So same as yesterday, I'm going to generate a number with my dice, and then we're going to round it to the nearest 10. And to help us with rounding, we have got our rounding rhyme, haven't we? So that helps us to realise whether we need to round up or whether we stay at the 10 that we are at. So our rounding rhyme is 5 to 9, we climb the vine. 0 to 4, we slide to the floor. So let's generate a number with my dice. Okay, so in my hundreds column I've got 600. In my tens column I've got a 1 and a 2. So let's generate that number there. So it's 600 and 12. Okay, and if I'm rounding to the nearest 10, which of these columns am I looking at? We should know now if we're rounding to the nearest 10, we are looking at our ones column, aren't we? So is my number 0 to 4, slide to the floor, or is it 5 to 9, we climb the vine? It's the number 2, so it's 0 to 4, we slide to the floor. So we are staying at the 10 that we have got, but when we round it, we need to have our 0 in our ones column. So we've got our 600, that stays the same. Because we are rounding and we're keeping it the same tens because it is 0 to 4. We slide to the 4, the 10 stays the same, but if we are rounding, I do need to round it to the nearest 10, so that means that I do need a 0 in my ones column. Okay, let's try one more before we move on to what we've got for today. Okay, so let's generate a number with my dice again. So we've got the number 3, so 300, and another 3, 336. Okay, so let's write that down. We've got 336. Lovely. So in my ones column, I'm going to look, is it 0 to 4 we slide to the floor, or is it 5 to 9 we climb the vine? And you can see that the number 6 is here, so we are climbing the vine and we're rounding it to the next 10. So my tens is actually getting 10 times bigger. My 100 stays the same, but my tens is now going to go from 30 to 40. And if we are rounding to the nearest 10, in my ones column needs to be the number 0. So we have rounded two numbers, one which we have stayed at the same 10, and another one behind me where we have rounded it up to the next nearest 10. These are all based on the numbers that are in your ones column. Okay. So I just want to recap what we mean when we say inverse, because in your booklet, section 1 is all about using the inverse operation. So you've got operations here. The operation is the symbol that we use in a mathematical equation. So we've got the addition, division, multiplication and subtraction. And when we say inverse, it means the opposite of another operation. So the opposite of adding would be what? Would it be dividing, timesing or subtracting? If the opposite of add, what would we link together with the addition symbol? Okay, so hopefully at home you have realised that these are the two numbers that link together and show that they are connected by the inverse. So the opposite to addition would be subtraction, and the opposite to subtraction would also be addition. And that would then mean that you've got division and multiplication are two other pairs that we use for operations. So the inverse of each of these operations would be linked together. So it's these two and these two operations that link together when we are doing the inverse. So in your booklets for section 1, you've got 4 number sentences, and what you need to do is use the inverse method. So you're using the same numbers, but you're making a different number sentence. So let's have a look at some of the examples I've got on the board. Okay, so my number sentence says 14 multiplied by 6 equals 84. And this is an example that's taken from your book. So it's section 1, question A. And I'm going to show you how to do this one, and then I've got an example of my own before you go on to do section 1 yourself. So you can see that I've already changed my operation to the opposite, to the inverse, which is division. So multiplication has now turned to division. Now I do need to use the same numbers that are already in my number sentence. So I'm going to use my answer, which is the largest number, at the beginning of my division sentence. So I've got 84, and I'm going to cross 84 off because I've used that number, and I have to use all of the numbers that are in the number sentence to use the inverse method. I can't make new numbers up. So I've got 2 more numbers in my number sentence. So I'm going to do 84 divided by 6 equals 14. Oh, I think the board's gone a little bit funny there. Okay, let's just move that back where it needs to be. There we go. So you can see now that I've used all of the numbers that were in the number sentence, but I've used them in a different order to create an inverse opposite calculation to the one that I've got originally. So let's have a look at another one that I've got on the board. Now this is a subtraction, so you can see that I've put my inverse in. The opposite to subtract is add, and I'm going to use the same 3 digits that are in my calculations to solve the inverse operation and create another calculation with the same numbers. Okay, so I'm going to start with my 2 bigger numbers. So I've got 568, and then I'm going to add 120, and it's going to equal 688. So you can see that what I'm doing is I'm using the same 3 numbers for this calculation. However, the order of them is going to be different, and it's going to be the opposite order for the opposite operation. So I'm starting with my total for the subtraction, and when I'm using the inverse method for addition, I am working my way backwards in the number sentence. Okay. So, when you get onto section 1 in your learning, I want you to have a look at the questions that you've got in your book and remember the inverse method. Remember what is the opposite to add, what is the opposite to multiply, and then you'll be able to use the same operation but using the same numbers that are in your calculation. Remember, I worked backwards from mine to get the same calculation, which was the correct total as well. Okay, so if you can complete section 1 for me, and then when you're ready to move on, I'm going to show you some other examples on the board. Okay, so when we are coming on to section 2 and section 3 of our learning, we are going to continue using the rounding method. So this is part of our learning for today. Yesterday we were visiting it briefly. Today we are going to continue to do that, but in a different form. So rather than just rounding, we are going to be working out the calculations, which is the estimate answer. Now, in your booklets, you have got a range of number sentences, and then what you've got to do is to circle the correct answer, which you think is the closest estimate. Now, to estimate it, what we do need to do is round it. So I'm going to round these numbers to the nearest 10, which will then provide me with an answer when I add them 2 together. So what I have got is 299, add 89. Now, what first thing I need to do is to round these together. So I need to round 299 to the nearest 10. So that's going to be 300. So underneath I'm going to write 300. And then I also need to round 89, which is going to be 90. The next thing that I need to do is I need to add these 2 together, which will give me an estimate, a very close guess to what this actual answer is. But it's going to be easier in my head to add these numbers together. So I've got 300, add 90, which is going to be 390. And that's going to be my closest estimate for that calculation. So you can see how I've rounded this number, I've rounded this number, added them together to solve the answer. Now in your booklets you've got a range of 3 answers to pick from, so you need to circle the correct answer that you've got to in your head. Okay, let's have a look at another addition number sentence behind me. We're going to start off again by rounding. So I've got 48, so I'm going to round 48 to the nearest 10. It is 5 to 9, so I'll go up to the next 10, which is 50. Okay, and then I'm going to add 201. So 200 and rounded to the nearest 10. It's 0 to 4, so we stay as we are, so it's the number 200. So I'm going to add these 2 together, and that's going to give my estimate answer for this calculation. So 50 add 200 is going to be 250. And like I say, on your books you're going to have a range of 3 answers. Only one of them is going to be the correct answer, so you need to circle the correct estimate for this answer. Okay, so let's move on now to section 3, so the third question that I've got. And this one is a subtraction. Okay, so I've got to bear that in mind when I am doing this calculation on the board. So I've got 202 subtract 57. Same again, I'm going to round, so 202, it is 0 to 4, so we stay as we are, so it's going to be the number 200. I am subtracting, so I've got to remember what operation I am using, and then we've got the number 57. So it's going to be 5 to 9 that we round up to the next 10, so it's going to be 60. So I need to do 200 subtract 60. So think if you can do this in your head before I write down the number on the board. So 200 subtract 60 should be 140. And if you did get that before I wrote this on the board, then well done to you. So remember, you've got to round first and then solve the equation in your head. You can do these mentally in your head, and then the best estimate is going to be in your books, and you're going to circle the best estimate. So we've worked it out already, and then you're going to double check, have I got that answer in my book? Okay then, so for your learning today, you're going to be using rounding and you are going to be using estimating. So we're using rounding and estimating together. So first you need to round those numbers together, add them up in your head, and you're going to solve the equations for section 2 and 3 in your learning. Now when you have finished your learning for today, I have got a short challenge on the board for you. So if any of you want to take part, this is my challenge for today. So I've got two numbers on the board. I've got 294 and I've got 435. What I need you to do is to round both numbers to the nearest 10, and then I need you to show two calculations showing the inverse method. So if you want to add these two together, that will give you a total, and then what I need you to do is to create the inverse method for that as well. So you're going to have two number sentences, both which include these numbers that are rounded to the nearest 10 and the answer, and then you're going to create another number sentence which is going to be your inverse method. Okay, so anybody who wants to have a go at that, that's great. Remember to send all of your work in, and well done for your hard work today and yesterday for estimating and rounding.